This is the Coming Home Podcast with John Allen. And welcome, everybody, to this episode of Coming Home with John Allen. Coming Home with John Allen is my new radio program. The Coming Home Podcast with John Allen is my up-and-running podcast. I've been doing that for almost 2 years now. Wherever you're watching or listening, I want to thank you all for being here. In the description of this episode, if you're watching on YouTube or listening on a podcast platform, you will find several links that you can click into if you would like to support the work that I do here on Coming Home with John Allen. And today I have with me Steve Solomon.
Hi there.
Hello, my friend.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. First time we met was at Starbucks.
A couple of years ago, yeah.
A couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. Second time we meet now, and we got coffee in front of us. It's not Starbucks. It's free.
Free is good.
Free is better, I say. Free is better. You are a fellow expat, a fellow American here in Norway. How long have you been here?
For a little over 11 years, I guess.
11 years. Good years? 11 good years?
Pretty much, for the most part. Yeah.
Happy, satisfied.
Yeah, I know a lot of expats have trouble assimilating, but...
They do. It's quite a varied experience. Some people find comfort and success immediately. Some, there's a little bit of middle ground. They're struggling a little bit, but they've kind of established themselves. And then some of us expats are really suffering.
Yeah, I see it. I see it a lot. Fortunately, I'm in the right line of work, so I didn't have that problem. But because of my, I guess, very odd background that we're going to talk about, I had no trouble because I'm always used to being on the outside. And so moving somewhere where you don't speak the language very well.
And the people can be a little standoffish at times. So this is okay for you. Yeah. The odd background you're talking about, if you could sum it up, we're not going to sum it up. We're going to talk about it in length. But if you could sum it up, just to give people a teaser, sum it up in 3 words, what would you say?
I guess I could say cult survivor. Let's do 2 words.
Cult survivor. Oh, come on, man. I don't get 3 words.
A cult survivor.
Thank you. A cult survivor. A cult survivor. Now, can you define cult for me and for my listeners? Because there's so many definitions to that.
Yeah, it's that word is very pejorative. If it's all right, I'll just read it.
Sure.
There is.
Let's just get the mic a little closer to you, or you a little closer to the mic. There we go. Come a little closer.
There we go. There's a particular cult expert in the United States. His name is Dr. Stephen Hassan, and he is, I guess he's been dealing with cults in some way for over 40 years. He has a PhD in a very interesting topic, which has to do with undue influence and how things like mind control actually work. And he was a cult survivor himself.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, it seems like he was a Mooney or something back when he was.
So he has the practical background and the education to back that up again.
And if I just want to wrong link. He has a website called freedomofmind.com. And
freedomofmind.com.
And I know that when I was breaking out of my situation, I couldn't accept that I was in a cult. I didn't want anything to do with the word because of that.
It's a strong word. It has a certain connotation. It leads the thoughts in a certain direction.
It's very negative.
Yeah.
And so, but what it actually means and how he's defined it is a destructive cult is a pyramid-shaped authoritarian regime with a person or group of people that have dictatorial control. They use deception to recruit new members. They do not tell them what the group is or what they're about or what they actually believe and what will be expected of them if they become members. And they also use undue influence to keep people dependent, obedient, and loyal. And of course, undue influence is defined as any act of persuasion that overcomes the free will and judgment of another person. And it can be in many different forms. It can be positive, like love bombing, or it can also be very negative, borderline psychological abuse.
And both paths lead to an enormous amount of control, or they can lead to an enormous amount of control over the individual. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so name the cult. And then let's talk about your experience within it.
In 1976, my mother started studying with Jehovah's Witnesses. And I was, how old was I in 1976? 8 years old. Prior to that time, I remember, I think we were Methodist or something. Mm-hmm. I think we went to church maybe, once in a blue moon, like most people do. And religion really wasn't the thing.
No, far from diehard Christians.
No, not at all. But we celebrated birthdays, we celebrated holidays. We were just like every normal middle-class suburban family. And then she
was in Texas, right?
Yes, in Dallas.
Yeah.
Dallas.
Shout out. For those of you who are watching, you see it. You see the number and you see the colors.
Dak Prescott, number 4, baby.
There you go.
Anyway, speaking of cults.
Hello, people.
But anyways, she started becoming very serious about it in 76. And then I think by the time I was in the 3rd grade, she had become a full member.
What year were you born?
68.
Okay. You're a year older than me. Okay, 76. Yeah, 7 years old then.
Yeah.
8 years old, sorry.
It was very confusing for my brother and I at that time.
How so? Tell me, how does a child experience a big change like that? Because that's a humongous change from, well, now I'm making an assumption here when I say it's a big change to go from let's call it a non-practicing Methodist to being a practicing Jehovah's Witness. I don't know too much about Jehovah's Witnesses, but I do know that there's a lot of structure.
That's one way to put it.
Okay. Am I being too soft? So then describe then how big of a change was it, and how did you experience that as a child?
What I remember in those days was, what stands out is that suddenly we were different than everyone else. We had to dress different. Okay. We had to talk different. We did different things. Suddenly we were supposed to preach their message at school. We couldn't. So
they put you on the evangelical path right away as children.
Right away.
Interesting.
We could no longer salute the flag.
Right.
Or say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Birthday parties at school.
No birthday parties, no holiday parties, nothing. I mean, it's.
How did your mom explain that to you? Because you don't just do that. I guess you can just do that, force that on a child with no explanation. You can, but did she give you an explanation?
It's more like the things that we were having to do, that we were required to do, were made into this much bigger thing. You were a part of this organization on earth that is God's true people. That's what they teach. Everyone else
is lost.
They're not. Yeah. But you are. And so you're a part of this God club now. And God is watching everything you do. So you have to make sure you don't do anything that he would disapprove of. Because you see, the other thing is true too. The devil's also watching everything you do. And everything that they don't want you to do, they demonize.
I see.
And so it's confusing when you were a kid because you don't have the concept of eternity, right? You don't understand what all this means.
Right.
But to make it worse for me, I suffered from night terrors when I was a kid. And the nightmares were bad. I still remember them to this day.
Yeah. Repeating nightmares, the same thing over.
Yeah, very, very, very bad ones. Yeah. I could tell you a little bit about some of what they are, but that would require bourbon. But anyway, so I was experiencing these things, and of course the church leaders came and they basically said, "Oh, it's because you have demons in your house." And it had something to do with my grandmother, who pretty much, I don't remember what religion she was. She was just a normal person.
Yeah.
But she had given my mom a Bible. And supposedly the demons were in that Bible, and they had this big deal where they got rid of it and took it away to burn it, and then everything was fine. But the thing for me was... So
they started dividing your family right away by putting that on your grandmother.
Right away.
Interesting.
Well, my father was not, he wasn't a witness at the time. And so he thought all this was just, a bunch of bunk.
Sure.
But for me, what was so scary was I'm 7 or 8 years old, and I actually think the devil is trying to get me, because that's what they told me.
And it's not that hard to put my mind into those conditions. You know, I was a kid too, and I can only imagine, I don't have to imagine to be able to feel what that would be like, to actually think that the devil is among you, is in your home, in your midst.
I have
as a child. That's frightening.
I have quite an imagination too.
I was thinking about night terrors. How about the day terrors of just walking around and
you know, you are in a room.
That.
You're in houses can be creepy anyway. Right?
Sure,
you know?
Sure.
And you're walking along, and certain parts of the house doesn't feel safe for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And you know, the house settles and makes a noise, and suddenly there's Satan trying to get you.
Right.
So,
how did you deal with that?
Not very well.
Were you able to have? Well, let me ask you this: what did your mother tell you? You know, did she arm you with any type of knowledge about what you could do to combat this supposed fact that the devil was in your home?
I had to pray a lot, and I had to read the Bible, and I had to read their literature. And you know, when you're 7 or 8 years old, Bible stuff, not so fun.
No, but did you do it though? For self-defense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's interesting though is when they said that they had solved the problem by getting rid of the demons, the night terrors didn't actually stop.
Okay.
I just stopped talking about it.
I see.
And so...
why? Why did you stop talking about it?
I don't really know. I didn't feel like, you know... I didn't know if they were taking me seriously or not. But it was a bunch of drama around it. And
so to keep peace for yourself, if I can use that word, maybe that's why you just it's better off for me not to even speak on this.
When you think about basic human psychology, when humans have evolved fight or flight instinct, that's how we've survived for the lifespan that we've been on the planet. My first go-to instinct is flight. I'm not much of a fighter. I prefer to just take myself out of a situation.
Yeah. And I think we're a lot alike in that sense. Yeah.
It just, I didn't feel that a lot of the dreams, the super bad ones, some of those had stopped, but I still had some others. Yeah. But what's interesting though is a few years later, I was still having them occasionally. And I don't know if it's a defense mechanism or not. I've never really talked about it with a psychologist or a doctor or anything. But when I have these dreams, I know I'm dreaming.
Yeah.
It's like a lucid state.
Right.
And I can change my dream.
Yeah.
And now it's like nightmares to me are kind of a joke.
Yeah.
You know.
With experience, with maturity, with that strengthening. Who's the podcast host today? Strengthening of the mind. I've read that people can actually turn nightmares into somewhat of an exciting challenge because they've learned to control their dreams. Okay, here's the same recurring situation that I have with these nightmares. How am I going to deal with it this time? How am I going to fix it this time? Are you at that stage?
Oh, yeah. I've been able to do that for decades.
It's a form of self-therapy, I've read.
God didn't help me do that either.
Right.
So, a little bit of doubt in my mind there.
It just seems so tragic that, and it is tragic, I'll call it trauma, excuse me, being introduced to you at that age as a child, and that trauma is being introduced, excuse me, wrapped in religion.
Well, it's way deeper than that.
How so? Speak on that, please.
If you look at their literature, I remember it would have been in the late 70s. See, what the witnesses have 5 meetings a week. And of course, it varies from location to location, but generally it's 2 meetings on a Tuesday, 2 meetings on a Thursday.
Well, 2 a day.
It's 2 meetings on Tuesday and 1 on Thursday, or vice versa.
Something like that. Yeah.
And 2 on Sunday.
Okay.
On Saturday, you're expected to go in the ministry work. And then all the time in between, you're supposed to be preparing for all these meetings and doing your reading and all this stuff. And they give you a lot of stuff. But every summer they have these big conventions that are held in stadiums usually. Mm-hmm. And this particular one, I want to say it was like 78 or 79. I can't memory, I'm not quite sure. But it was in where the Astros played, the Astrodome.
Okay, yeah.
In Houston.
Houston Astrodome, yeah.
And so we had gone down there, and they had released this publication called My Book of Bible Stories for the kids. It was this big deal, special thing. All the kids felt, oh, this is great. They're giving us this thing to read. And, of course you read it and everything. And it's basically, it tells a much simpler version of biblical stories from start to finish.
Yeah.
I remember seeing this book about, I don't know, when I was breaking out about 20 years ago. And it's horrific when you read it, because it talks about how it normalizes violence, because God is going to kill everyone that doesn't believe the way we do.
Yeah, I see.
And they show all these graphic pictures of these people's, looking up and these angels coming down in fire and all this stuff. And
it's really magnifying the image of that vengeful Lord.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's one thing, and again, I don't know too much about Jehovah's Witness, but I've always marveled at the level of violence. These images, different drawings and paintings that they refer to, and it's like, and I'm a Christian, and it makes one wonder what has happened to mankind's use of and interpretation of religion when two supposedly Christian faiths can practice in so widely different manners.
Well, I guess I've often wondered similar things, but it really goes into, what does it mean to be Christian? You're supposedly following the teachings of Jesus, right? That's where Christian came from. But who was Jesus?
Right. Jesus was a man.
He was a Jew.
Yeah.
And Jesus was Old Testament.
Yeah.
That's really all they had in those days. And the Old Testament, if you've never read it, man, it's brutal.
It is. I've read it cover to cover, Old and New Testament. I've done it 3 times in my life. Yeah. And with each reading comes new interpretations. And that is, I'll say this. I don't believe that religion in itself is something bad. I don't believe that, you'll see people write all the time on social media that religion is the cause of so much trouble and trauma and violence in the world. I don't look at it that way. I look at mankind's interpretation of religion as the cause of that, because the Old Testament is brutal, especially if you take it literally. Mm-hmm. But if you take it for its imagery, if you take your, dare I say, God-given mind and put it to work as you read that, for me anyway, I have no inclination towards violence. I see the lessons in what is there in the Old Testament. And then in the New Testament, I just can't find anything that refers to the violence and the oppression that we see people using today in the name of religion. I don't see. I personally don't see it.
There's some in Revelation.
Well, a little bit. Something about the end of the world, and
gets a little.
But the general thrust of the New Testament is caring, giving, equality, service. Right.
Then the Apostle Paul came, and he was a bit of a hardliner, but for the most part, I think the message of the Gospels is what you say,
for the most part. But again, it's all in how mankind interprets it, and that's the sad thing. And I don't want to say anything derogatory about Jehovah's Witness because I don't know that much about it. But the parts that I do know, I find it hard to identify with. I try to find the connection to what I think Christianity is, and I struggle with that. Well, which tells me that man's interpretation of religion has done something to the religion itself.
You have inadvertently uncovered one of the core tenets of what it means to be in a cult. In a cult, they do your thinking for you.
Yeah.
They tell you what to think.
Uh-huh.
They tell you how to feel about it. And so you're not allowed to interpret it. You have to take their version of how things are.
Right.
And there's no dissension at all. You're not, if you dissent, they crack down hard.
How so? What happens to someone who shows dissent? But before we get to that, or maybe as a little side path to that, let me go back to when you were a kid. And again, this new, this religion, this new thing has been introduced into your family. It's a shock to you. Did you ever rebel against it?
Oh yeah. All the time.
How so, and what were the consequences?
Wow. I mean, there's two ways to rebel. There's an overt rebellion where you basically say, kind of like what you see my home state doing these days with the vaccine mandate. You can't tell me what to do, and I'm going to do whatever. Do your worst.
Texas in a nutshell.
Yeah. Then there's the subtle rebellion where didn't see it, can't prove it.
Okay.
And I was in the didn't see it, can't prove it camp.
Okay.
So what happens is you end up living a double life. And you are a different person around non-cult people. Sometimes people get real extreme with it. I wasn't very extreme with it. It's just I felt much more relaxed when I was not with people in the cult because of again, you have to toe the line. You have to be constantly working and doing the things that they want you to do. And you have to always spout the rhetoric.
That's too much for a child to have to be occupied with.
It's a tremendous amount of energy to be spent to live a double life.
It's stifling. Yeah. I would imagine that it is almost impossible for a child to be a child.
Yeah. Yeah. Sadly.
Because childs push borders. Did I say child? Children. I'm tired, people. Forgive me. Children push borders. Children try to bend the rules a little bit. That's natural, but it sounds like the teachings of the Jehovah Witness, they want to erase that. They're looking for blind obedience.
They want blind obedience.
And I don't think that's natural for any child. I'm not a psychologist, but as a parent, I can say that blind obedience kind of, I've never heard that term used in good parenting.
No, it's not good in anything. And, you know, the sad thing is, if you believe that there is an intelligent creator who has created humans and given them a brain to use, why don't you let them use it?
Well, and also even Jesus took the time to speak with the doubters.
Yeah. Yeah, he did.
Hello.
But I guess back to your point.
In other words, there should be some room for discussion here rather than the blind obedience that they're calling for. And
there really isn't. If I've often spoke of this to other people, and I've had many people say to me, "Oh, well, I know Jehovah's Witnesses, and they don't behave that way." And I said, "Well, I mean, if you really want to experience what it is that I'm saying, go to their meetings,
right?
Talk to them, and if you want to study with them, ask them this important question. Ask them, what happens if I change my mind?"
Yeah. And what would their answer be?
Oh, they're not going to tell you right away, but what they do is if you because you asked me about dissent, what happens?
Yeah.
You get counseled. They have this body of leaders. They're effectively clergy. They don't like to call themselves the clergy because that's what they consider Babylon the Great, the world empire of false religion, and we have to be different, right? Anyway, so they have what they call elders. Elders. And there will be 3 of them, and they will basically read you the riot act.
Okay.
So, and if you don't, they call it repent, or if they don't see evidence of your repentance, they can kick you out, which means you get shunned.
So you better toe the line. Repent means to change. You better change. You better do what is right according to our
and you have to demonstrate that. Yeah. Right? Now, they don't tell you this when you're interested in their message. They go through what's called love bombing.
Right.
So they want to present the best picture possible. Oh, we're so happy people, and you come and we'll help you do all this stuff. And
again, going back to the definition of a cult, that's how they get their members into the fold. Yeah.
And, I've been thinking most of my life, what draws people to cults? I think you have two kinds of people that end up in cults. You have people who are broken in some way. Either they're not right upstairs in the head, or they've had so much trauma in their life that they're just broken, and they're looking for something better.
Right.
And then you have people who are born or effectively born in. And the difference between those two people is night and day.
I can imagine.
A lot of times the people who join as adults, they're more hardline. The ones who, like me, effectively grow up in it, we have a bad case of cognitive dissonance. Bad case. And sometimes we resolve it, and sometimes we don't. I know many people who, I assume they're still in.
Yeah.
Because what
happened? And you have to assume because you probably don't have contact with them anymore.
No.
Yeah.
When I left after a really weird series of events.
Tell us about it.
Let's see. I guess
I know we're kind of jumping around here,
it's fine.
But I this is an organic conversation, and I'm truly interested. So you're saying this one thing, I'm like, oh yeah, let's follow that. And
well, I guess when I was younger, they held out a path for me. And the path was, everyone.
When you say they, you mean
the the organization.
The organization.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
They held out a path for me, and what the path was all about more service. So they wanted me to. They have this. Their headquarters in New York is called Bethel, and that's where all the good people go. They go and they volunteer, and they spend their life serving God there. Is
it like a big complex?
Yeah.
In New York City, or?
It was at the time. I believe it's in New Jersey now. They moved it somewhere, upstate New York or somewhere. I don't remember.
Okay.
But it was right there in Brooklyn. So, I had visited it a couple times. Kind of creepy.
Really?
Yeah, a little creepy. But anyway, and so I thought, okay, this would be a good thing for me to do. But you see, I enjoyed school, and I really wanted to work with computers.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a programmer, but you can't do that unless you go to college.
Right.
But see, college, not allowed.
Not allowed?
Nope. They came out and told us many times that college is not for people who want to be in their organization.
And their reasoning for that?
Their real reasoning.
I think I know what the real reason is, but what do they tell you?
Their reasoning is that, the world's coming to an end anyway, so why waste your time getting an education in something you don't need?
So by the way,
these universities are full of bad people, and if you associate with them, then you'll be out.
By them saying there's no sense in furthering your education because the world's going to end anyway, they're removing a large part of the message of at least the New Testament, which is a message of hope.
Well, they're replacing it with their hope. You see, they believe, we haven't really established what their main doctrine is. Their main doctrine is that in 1914, that was the end of the Gentile times, and Jesus has now turned his attention invisibly to the earth, and that has begun the last days. And this, that's a pretty big paraphrasing.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to it than that, but essentially, the time is ticking, because then the last days will start, and then God will put an end to it, and will put Satan in prison for 1,000 years, restore the earth to like it was in Eden, resurrect all the dead people, and then they will be given the chance to learn about, what God wants them to do. And then at the end, they're given the choice. They either choose to live forever in paradise on earth, or they get destroyed with the devil. That's their picture that's their end game.
Yeah.
Now, the funny thing is how they came up with that date. But you come back to that. That's the funny, funny story.
Yeah.
But so with that in mind, why would you go to college?
Right.
You don't need to learn anything because, the end is just around the corner.
Right.
It's any second.
So
it's like
why waste time?
Every assembly, every meeting, it's like, okay, any second now.
So why waste time on this endeavor that can be perceived as something selfish? You're trying to gain knowledge that doesn't have anything to do with being a Jehovah's Witness. Why waste time on that? Keep doing our work.
Yep. Because
the time is coming.
You have the responsibility to bring in as many people as you can to save them from being destroyed. So you are, in effect, what's the word I'm looking for? Sanctified isn't really the word I'm looking for, but it's like you have a holy mission.
I was going to say you're very bound by the doctrine. You're very bound by the message, by the very essence of being a Jehovah's Witness. You're bound, and it encompasses such a large part of one's life. Especially a child who can't, doesn't have the freedom to break out of that. Right. But how does it affect a person's financial life? Because, again, I don't know too much, but I hear stories about how you don't even have control of your own finances as a Jehovah's Witness.
Wow,
what is that all about?
There's a lot of hyperbole out there.
Sure.
But
where does it come from? What's it based in?
I think a lot of times when people leave the organization, I know when I left, I was very angry. And, you realize that you were sold a bill of goods and it's not true.
You feel like a fool.
Yeah.
What kind of jackass was I to believe?
But you feel cheated.
Okay.
Absolutely cheated because
gotcha.
I know that for me, I wanted to go to college. Yeah. I didn't get to. I wanted to do a lot of things that I didn't get to do. I felt like half of my life had been stolen from me. And you know how it is in the U.S. You can't go to college easily after you start working.
Exactly.
And so
I can see a lot of Norwegians just saying, well, go to college now. Well, yeah, here in Norway, it's an easy thing to do. Back home,
I think
different story.
To our lovely Norwegian audience.
And they are lovely. We love you.
The cost of a U.S. education at a college is about the same price as your house.
Just to put things in perspective.
Yes.
Yeah.
We don't have Lånekassen. We have loan sharks. Loan sharkakassen, That's what we have, Anyway, but so, a lot of times people feel very angry and they say things. Sometimes things are taken out of context.
I see.
And a lot of times it's just word of mouth. I mean, people
hear
things and they say. But what they do, they push for donations all the time. You have to give. No, I never did.
Do they set a percentage of your income?
No, they don't.
It's not a tithing type of thing. They just say give.
They just infomercial you to death with their message during the meetings, during these conventions, during these smaller assemblies. Yeah. It's always, give to the organization, give to the organization. And I did a little bit, but I know some who did a lot.
Yeah.
There are also stories out there where, and this is kind of tragic, but in 1975, the organization had another one of their shakeups because someone somewhere in their higher ups suggested in a rather strong way that 1975 was going to be the end of the world.
Okay.
Now they claim they didn't do it, but if you go back and look at the literature that was put out at the time,
was it pretty clear?
It was pretty clear that they were heavily suggesting 1975. They didn't come out and say this is when it's going to be, but they really geared it towards that. And I know of some people that sold their house.
Because they were true believers.
They were true believers. They sold their house. They gave all their money to the organization, everything. And then 75 came and went, and nothing.
And I wonder what those people felt.
I I think you've heard the term conniption.
Yeah.
I think that was probably what they were feeling.
Can you remember what kind of rhetoric then or explanation that the elders put out then to
no,
explain?
This was before my time.
This was before your time.
When I would have been in 76, 77, I do remember hearing people talk about it.
Yeah.
But
you're probably too young to really.
I was too young to really pay attention to it.
Yeah.
But I remember my mom saying things like, well, it doesn't matter if they were wrong because we have to do what they say, especially when they're not right, because it's better to be obedient than it is to be correct.
And far be it for me to decide how people practice their religion, but I've always questioned this certain sections of Christianity who put so much power in the individual men who are supposedly leading this religion. I don't see anywhere in the Bible where neither Jesus nor his disciples were having so much control over people's lives. I just don't see how did. And again, I'm just questioning. I'm not condemning. I'm questioning. I don't understand where they. Where their justification for giving so much power to individuals within
probably
the
not
religion.
in the New Testament, but in the Old Testament it was full of that, right? You had the Davidic kings, you had Moses, you had all of the prophets, so they had a lot of. I would say that model is very much in line.
That's more rooted in the Old Testament,
in
of
the Old
course.
Testament,
Yeah.
But going back to me, so I had this goal of going to this organization, going to Bethel, to New York, and of course,
How old are you at this time?
Me?
No, at the time.
At the time, probably about 15.
Okay.
Or so, and I remember that's when I came to the conclusion. Okay, I need to be baptized now because I wasn't before that.
Yeah.
And so my brother and I got baptized at the same time. I think I was about 15, I think. It was somewhere in there. But see, once you become baptized, now you're locked in. You must do every single thing they say.
Yeah.
Because they hold you to that. Because if you're baptized and you're disobedient, they can kick you out.
Yeah.
And when I say you get kicked out,
what does
you
that
get
mean?
shunned. You've seen these movies of these crazy religions where they basically
medieval
and
times.
They don't talk to them. They have nothing to do with them. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Shunning is it's a horrible thing. They say, well, we're doing this because we love you. We want you to come back to us.
Yeah.
But that's not.
Well, I can imagine how horrible that would be to be shunned like that. We were far from fanatic Christians, but we went to church on Sundays. But it wasn't just the religious gathering, but there were also friendships that were made.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a part of a social life.
Yeah.
And then to have that suddenly cut off, that is no small thing.
Yeah. But it's not just friends.
It's not just friends.
It's family as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And so,
wow.
I mean, if you have a job where you're working with, because a lot of the witnesses have their own companies, you lose your job too. It can be quite bad. Well, anyway, so I'm about 15. I decide I want to do this, and I had my share of problems. Every teenager growing up does dumb things.
Sure.
And I did my dumb things too, and it was a little bit more probably tame compared to non-believers.
Yeah.
But I remember we lived in Washington, D.C. at the time, and there was this one elder there. He just did not like me. I don't know why. I never did anything to him, but he got it in his head that he was going to run me out. Okay. And so I remember one Sunday after the meeting, I got pulled into the library, and he and two other elders basically I don't even remember what it was about.
Wow.
I mean, it's a long time ago, but they basically counseled me about something I didn't do. And I said, but I didn't I didn't do this. And they kept saying, on and on, well, others have said you did blah, 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 and you have to. I went home and told my mom because I was pretty mad.
Sure.
And she was like, well, this is a test of faith.
I was just going to say, could this be some sort of convoluted, twisted test of sorts?
And I said, I don't care. This is injustice.
It's not right. Yeah.
I was treated unjustly.
Yeah.
She had words with this man later, but my dad, who still wasn't interested, he basically said, just quit going. I wish I had listened, but I didn't. So I started having doubts. I guess I was probably about 18 at this point. And then the gossip started.
Oh, about you?
About me. Yeah. Apparently, I have it on good authority that I'm an asshole because I did a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't even know I did.
Yeah.
And all this gossip is coming to me, and I'm like, where is this coming from? And once the gossip mill starts, then the friends start pulling away from you.
Sure, it's that way in life in general, but especially in an organization like Jehovah's Witness with their rules that they have.
And so I just basically said, you know what? I just went into coast mode. I no longer was really very interested in going to Bethel or serving or anything like that. I was working at the time. I worked at Xerox. I learned graphic art. I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. Yeah. So I learned that. I was doing that and some office work and things. And so I had an okay job. I still had some friends. I would still go to the meetings because I had to, because I lived at home and my mom required it of me. But I really wasn't gung-ho about it anymore.
Right.
And then I guess a couple of years later, I met this girl, as we all tend to do. And,
from time to time.
Yeah.
I haven't met a girl since 2002, though. So, hello, Snoopy.
Yeah. You hear any knives?
She'll cut me.
She's got the knives.
She'll cut me.
But anyway, this particular girl was not baptized. Her mother was, but she was not. And they were studying with her. And since I'm baptized, I'm not supposed to date her.
Oh, really? They're that strict about it?
That strict. You're not supposed to do it. Now, you can do it.
But
right?
they'll frown on it.
Oh, they more than frown.
Okay.
They take your privileges away. So,
hold on. Privileges.
Oh, yeah. We haven't really talked about that.
I'm sorry, we're bouncing all over the place, but this is just fascinating to hear.
As a man, you have privileges. Women don't.
And that was on my list of questions. What is the difference between? Is there any gender?
Oh yeah. Apparently, one must have the holy penis to serve God.
Holy penis.
Yes. Go figure why.
So you have privileges if you're a man that you won't have if you're a woman.
Right.
For example, privileges.
You can get up and give public talks where, like on Sunday, they have an hour-long talk.
So ladies, if you're a talker,
you don't get to do it.
Can't do it.
Now, during their ministry school, where they teach you how to do this preaching work, that's usually like on a Thursday night or something. Yeah. You can have a 5-minute talk, but you have to be sitting down.
but you have to be sitting down.
Yeah. You cannot lead any meetings. If you're leading a meeting and a man is present, you must cover your head.
You must cover your head.
It has to do with...
I didn't know there were any rules about head covering.
Only if there's a man present, though.
Interesting. That's a new one for me.
It has to do... I don't remember where. It's something the Apostle Paul wrote. I think it's in Romans somewhere where it says that. I'll show you later. But it's a silly rule, right? But so if you're a man, you basically get to do everything. They make a big deal out of all these, you get to get up and give talks. They have a few you can do. You can, the elders are the highest rank in the local congregation, but then they have a junior rank called ministerial servant.
Okay.
And you help with basically the work of running a congregation, privileges even of carrying microphones. Adjusting the microphone on the stage for the person giving the talks. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they hold this out like this is such a great privilege for you. I mean, carrying a microphone is a great privilege.
I'm trying to get my head around that. Where is there a thread that they can weave that leads back to some passages in the Bible that would justify these types of things?
Oh, I'm sure there is.
Nothing comes to mind.
My mind would probably just strangle my head if I tried to think about it.
And this goes back to my thing about the religion is being overshadowed by the personal
agendas.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's less biblical and more worldly, and that is what I'm not understanding.
There's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah.
But so anyway, the privileges, right? I didn't get to do those things. What a shock, I didn't really want to do that anyway. So it's great. I mean, I'm into the conservation of energy, my energy to be specific. So if I get to be lazy, that's a great thing. But everyone is expected to do the ministry work. So,
okay. Men and women.
Men and women and children.
Yes, so, you mentioned that, and children.
Praying is another. Leading the congregation in prayer. That's a man-only thing.
Okay.
So, but anyway, so because I was wanting to date this girl, and we kind of did date a little bit. Mm. We kind of snuck around for a while. I got into all kinds of trouble again.
Yeah.
And, I guess I was probably 20, 21, 22 at this point. And then she ended up moving to live with her mom in Florida. And I followed her.
You did?
I went to Cape Coral.
Now, was her mother a practicing Jehovah's Witness?
She had quit.
She
actually was what they call disfellowshipped. That's when they kick you out.
Okay.
So we're not supposed to have any contact or anything, but I was there. So.
And nobody knew?
Well, yeah, they did.
Okay. Your mother?
They knew. Yeah, my parents knew.
Okay.
And they were not happy about it at all.
By that time, was your father
He was kind of starting to become interested.
Okay, so you had double the pressure then doing this.
Not from him at that time.
Not yet. Okay,
not yet.
How did your mother react though? She knew. And
oh boy, she read me the riot act every time I talked to her.
And did she snitch on you to the elders? She did.
But the thing is, at this point, I lived on my own. Mm-hmm. So, and no one could prove that I was doing anything wrong according to their rules. Yeah. I mean, okay, I was associating with a girl that I'm not supposed to be associating with, but that's not a capital crime.
No.
So they treated me, the term they use is called marking. I was marked.
Which means
I am bad association,
It just sounds so Gileadish. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It does.
Well, I think, were you and I talking about Handmaid's Tale gave me PTSD.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because...
And you know what? And I get it.
Yeah.
I do.
And I've told people this before. If you want to know what the kinds of conditions I lived in, minus the handmaids, okay, no sex.
Right.
Why did my mom have to choose a boring cult? I don't know. No sex, no drugs, nothing, right? Just Bible. Anyway.
Where's Charles Manson when you need him?
Right. I mean, a little tattoo. I mean, but if you wanted to know what it was like, watch that show.
As far as the rigidness of it,
the totalitarian,
the thought control,
them telling on everyone, the snitching, the spying. I mean, the severe punishments for small crimes. Not being able to be a natural human being. That kind of a thing. But also, anyway, so I guess it didn't work out between me and the girl. I won't identify her because we're still friends today.
Good.
She's my oldest friend, actually.
Okay.
Because she actually got married in that faith and had kids, and she also had terrible experiences too. Yeah. And she left. I think she left before I did.
Okay.
But I ended up moving to San Antonio where my parents were. And about this point, I think is when my dad started becoming interested and he started studying. And then a few years later, he became a hardliner like my mom.
What did that do to, or did it do anything to you? Did it affect you in any way when he...
It annoyed the hell out of me.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It annoyed the hell out of me.
Did it? Okay.
Yeah, because I remember one time he wrote on a piece of paper this scripture and he handed it to me. And I looked at it. I don't remember the book and verse, but I remember the words.
Yeah.
Obey your parents in everything. I think it's a proverb or a psalm. And I looked at him. By this time, I'm 24 years old.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're a few years too late for that, buddy.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The job either has been done or has not been done, and that's that.
But they view it as we are still your parents. You must do what we say. And I'm like,
right. Yeah.
Do you pay for how I live? Nope. There's the door,
So you were able to have that line of thinking, even though you were indoctrinated, if you will, as a child. What made you different? Because not everyone breaks away like that.
See,
what made you different?
that has been, I think, when I started breaking away is when I started understanding who I am as a person. We can get to that in a minute.
Yeah, because I wonder how you had room to figure yourself out as a person when everything is so controlled.
Yeah. It's not easy to do.
Maybe you can speak on that later. Yeah.
So coming back to, I'm in my early 20s. I finally find this person that I thought was going to be my wife. I did marry her. Probably the biggest mistake I've ever made. I refer to her as crazy cult wife. Oh, because she was crazy. I mean, I learned a lesson that every young man should learn. Don't marry for looks. Don't do that. You may think it's a good idea at the time. Yeah. It's not. Don't do it. Just say no.
Well, in all seriousness, the best relationships are I look at my relationship with Snoopy. We've been together for 21 years. And of course, looks is part of it, but it's far from all of it. And I think that is key to us making this work almost effortlessly for so long. We found other things about each, she's a fine Norwegian woman, but there's so much more to her than that. And luckily for me, I was mature enough and smart enough to see that. And I think it's key to the longevity of at least my relationship with her. Yeah. I don't know how that works for other people, but that multifaceted attraction beyond the physical is important.
By the way, just mentioning Snoopy, hashtag Team Snoopy.
Oh, God, no, you're a traitor. Team Snoopy. For those who may or may not understand this whole thing with Snoopy from time to time is on my podcast. So just search my podcast, the Comin Podcast with John Allen, and then search Snoopy in that search as well. And you'll find a lot of episodes where she's been the guest, and I'm constantly teasing her to the point to where people who I thought were my friends have now rallied against me with hashtag Team Snoopy.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
This may or may not be an organized effort. You cannot confirm or deny.
Yes, I have no recollection of that. Don't play the tape back.
Don't play the tape back.
But, so anyway, I guess
where were we?
We were in my mid-20s. I married this awful woman. Yeah. It was a terrible, terrible, terrible relationship. She was very violent with me.
Really?
Yeah.
But that's not the subservience that...
I was a beaten man.
But that's not the subservience that... Or am I wrong? Doesn't Jehovah's Witness teach a certain subservience?
You're not supposed
that a
to
woman
do that.
is supposed... Yeah.
But she had some problems. And
okay, above and beyond her... okay.
She was very narcissistic, but she had this unbelievable insecurity. I mean, she needed therapy, but see, you can't get therapy in that faith. They look.
They are the therapy,
right?
You need to speak to the elders.
You must pray more. And I would go to them and I would say, she's destroying my work equipment. Like she would get mad at me because I would get paged. Remember when we had pagers?
Yeah,
I would get paged and I have to go and fix something at work. And she would get so angry, and she destroyed it a couple of times by throwing it into the wall. And I had to go, and I had to go to my boss and say, I need a new pager. And he's like, well, what happened to it? I'm like, do I really have to tell you?
Man.
And he's like, you do. And so I told him, and he looked at me. He's like, dude, why are you in that relationship?
Any woman who is in that kind of a relationship with a man would be advised to leave for her own protection.
She would hit me. She would just do all kinds of, she would scream at me just nonstop.
Terrible.
And
how many years were you together?
Well, you're not allowed to divorce either. So I got married at 24. When I was done, because she pulled a kitchen knife on me, I like to cook. And so I have some big knives.
Yeah.
And she pulled a kitchen knife on me. And I looked at her and I'm like, whatever you're going to do, you got one shot, make it count.
Yeah.
But instead she went into the bathroom and locked the door and started screaming that she was going to kill herself. And, at this point I was so tired of it. I said something rather immature, like, well, can you get in the bathtub so it's easier to clean up, but I left the next day.
Yeah. You did.
I did. I left the next day.
Did you have any fear about the repercussions from
the
absolutely. Jehovah's Witness?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I knew I wasn't supposed to do that. Right. Well, actually back up a little bit. 6 months before that happened. Remember with the privileges and all that kind of a thing, I was doing pretty well.
Yeah.
I never got promoted. I was reaching out for it.
Yeah.
But I was always overlooked, right? Never considered. And I always wondered why. Anyway, we had the Tuesday meeting. It's like a 1 hour long meeting where you go through a publication. We had it at my house.
Okay.
Because that's a privilege, right?
Yeah.
And we would make it like the social, people would stay afterwards and we'd have some wine and some snacks and just, basically chill out and have, and just enjoy each other's company.
Yeah. Well,
one night, my house got shot up, drive-by shooting.
Oh, wow.
Just a fluke thing, right?
Yeah.
I actually almost got killed in it. I had gotten up in the middle of the night I had to use the bathroom. And when I came back to bed, as I sat down in my bed, the wall above my head about that much, boom,
about an inch or so. Wow.
turned out to be someone went through my neighborhood with an AK-47.
Wow.
And they were shooting at cars. And they happened to be shooting at my neighbor's cars.
Yeah.
And they missed. And it hit my bedroom. Because of that, the people that were coming to my home suddenly decided that where there's smoke, there's fire. So I must be doing something. And this crazy woman I was married to was saying all kinds of bad things about me anyway. And so
terrible.
They said, okay, you can't have the meeting there anymore. And then she started becoming more and more violent and unhinged. And I'm like, I'm out.
That's too much.
I'm either going to kill myself or she's going to kill me.
Yeah.
And so you cannot live in that kind of a situation for very long.
You just can't. Did you guys have any kids?
No. On purpose.
Yeah.
She wanted them, but
you
no
knew.
way.
You knew.
There's no way I'm going to be chained to this woman.
Yeah.
Right? No way.
Yeah.
So I left. I went to my mom's house. I stayed with them for a little while until I realized this is a huge mistake.
Yeah.
Because they kept pushing me, oh, you live here now, you have to go to the meetings and you have to this. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that.
You were out at that point. You were done.
I cannot deal with this, know? And so I've got smart and moved into my own apartment. And that apartment, I lived there for 2 years. To me, it's still sanctuary, because I wouldn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
I just stayed at home. I started playing online games. That's when MMOs were really a big deal. And I discovered them and I'm like, this is great.
Yeah.
Because I can socialize and play and not go out of the house,
Yeah.
But you see, when I say I left the cult, I found a loophole.
Okay.
In those days, it's called fading away. In those days, they didn't have the concept that people could just stop going, right? They just stopped going. I never signed a paper that said, I don't want to be one of the, go do whatever to yourself. And they never kicked me out.
No.
I just didn't go anymore. And so I started doing a bunch of research, as people tend to do. The internet is such a killer for cults like this, That's when I started learning a bunch of stuff that I didn't know before. And it's from a bunch of people like me who had basically been sold a bill of goods their whole life. Or they
so
knew
you're
something
reading their stories.
Yeah, I'm reading their stories.
And seeing how similar they were.
There are a lot of people that are still in that faith that are feeding information. It says it in this book. Because they have a lot of private things. Like the elders' books.
Oh, yeah.
The rank and file isn't allowed to see. No, they're not allowed.
What is that?
It's control of information, right? Stephen Hassan has a very good...
It's following the
very
definition of a cult.
He has a very, very good model called the BITE model, which talks about control.
What's his name again?
Dr. Stephen Hassan.
Dr. Stephen Hassan, people, look him up. I'm going to.
Yeah.
I'm interested.
The BITE model is all about controlling behavior, information, thought, and emotion.
Behavior, information, thought, and emotion. You control that. You control the person. You control the narrative. You have power.
Basically, yeah.
You have power.
And I guess I had been exposed to Dr. Hassan at that time. Actually, I don't think he was a PhD at that time, but a lot of people, he had written a book and a lot of people were circulating that book, and I read some of it, but I couldn't come to terms with the fact that if this is true, then I was in a cult, right?
Right.
And so I kind of shied away from it. And
because again, cult has that ugly connotation.
Right. And so I basically fled and just repressed everything.
Okay.
Then with work, I managed to get a job in England. So I got the hell out of Dodge, right?
I didn't know you lived in England.
I lived in London for 2 years.
And how old were you then by this time?
33, I guess.
Okay.
33.
So now at this point, you've in your mind, you're done, but there's been no formal declaration. You haven't signed any papers, so to speak. But how is your parents taking this?
Majorly.
Because by now, I'm sure you're not going to any meetings.
Nope.
You're no longer active.
They are majorly applying pressure to me.
Okay. Constant or periodic?
Pretty much. No, constant. My mom and I would argue all the time on the phone. And I mean, I would have friends, these friends, very conditional. They would see me in the store and then just turn their heads and walk away.
So there's that.
I hadn't done anything.
Right.
I hadn't done anything.
That destruction of the fabric of your social life. Not just forget about religious and the church or the organization, but also your social life.
So I guess it really
upset. So it probably felt good then to go to England.
Yeah, because I got completely out of it, right? Well, I lived there for 2 years. I ended up getting married to my Norwegian wife because we got pregnant with my first child. But then I got transferred back to San Antonio.
Oh, so you were in the same company when you got this job to England. Okay.
I'm like, oh no, how's this going to go?
Yeah.
So we moved back. It wasn't long before the religious pressure started up again. And it was pretty strong. And
were you living close to your parents at this time? Same city or?
They lived outside of San Antonio. It's maybe a 30-minute drive or so.
Okay.
And my brother lives next door to them, and they kind of would, because of my now ex-wife, they didn't put on their worst show in front of her.
I see.
But they did to me. And she didn't understand cults at all. And she's like, well, just tell them to stop doing that. It's like, that's not how
very pragmatic Norwegian approach to it.
That's not how zealots think.
Yeah.
You can't do that. And I remember one time I got so mad at my mom. I said, you know what? I don't need this. I don't need you.
Yeah.
And I didn't speak to her for a year.
Wow.
And they ended up forcing their way over. It's like a year later, they came over to the house.
But for a period, and I don't know, maybe this happened several times, for a period, it literally tore you away from your family.
Yeah. Well, we're back there again.
Are you back there again? Yeah. Okay.
Well, so long story short.
Can you grab me the coffee?
Oh, yeah.
Would you please?
Do you need me to fill it for you?
Yeah, would you? My defunct left arm here.
One moment, please.
One moment, please. You got to twist that on the top. Oh, yeah. No, there it goes. For those of you watching on YouTube or listening on a podcast platform, remember, please check the links in the description of this episode if you would like to support the work that I do. See, I got to plug myself. Nobody else is going to do it. Snoopy doesn't even know the name of this podcast. Back to this, you and you Team Snoopy minions. Who's going to plug it for me? Certainly not Snoopy. She doesn't even know the name of the podcast.
I only heard you say Team Snoopy. What was the rest?
Oh, boy.
Hashtag Team Snoopy.
The Peanuts teacher.
Hey, she's got knives. It's like, you're big, but your arms don't work. She's got knives.
I got an arm that doesn't work. She's got knives in both hands.
Anyway, so to make a long story short, more or less, we had this truce, and because they wanted to see their grandchildren, and so we would see them maybe once a month or something. We would go over there for dinner, or sometimes they would come over.
You had 2 kids by this time?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was always, we would talk about just some, typical, just the word just popped right out of my head.
Like just flat things, like nothing of content, really, just to kind of get along for the sake of the kids.
How's the weather?
Maybe?
This and that. Small talk. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah.
That must be an uncomfortable situation to be in with your parents.
Yeah. Well, it was actually.
I can see being like that.
Very disturbing.
I can see being that way with a colleague at work or an old friend who maybe has done you wrong or something. But this is your parents,
and it would always turn into the religious pitch.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, so and so at the church did this, and oh, so and so did that, and and so was asking for you, and then we learned this the other day, and then we had this new da 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 da. And it always turned into that, and I'm just like, whatever, But we ended up we moved to Austin for about a year. And then that was in 2008 when the financial collapse and it was bad. I lost my job again. And then we came to Norway.
In 2008. Yeah.
And I had not.
You got the heck out of Dodge at the right time because people were really getting slammed economically in the States right around then. Losing their homes and everything. We
sold our house. We were fortunate to sell the house.
Did you do well with the sale?
I made money.
Beautiful. Good.
I made $15.
Oh, what a slap in the face. I know, my gosh.
But at least I didn't know.
But at least, I was just going to say, at least it didn't ruin you with lifelong debt. Because people really got hurt.
Yeah, it was bad.
So you came to Norway in 2008 and you hadn't...
No, 2010.
2010. And you hadn't really resolved this thing.
Well,
this situation.
To make matters worse, I mean, during the 2007, 2008 period of time, with all of that pressure being applied to me, I basically had a break. I had to take off from my work because I just couldn't function anymore. Wow. And so I went, I'll never forget this. I drove to the hospital. I drove myself, went in for a psychological evaluation. I walked into a room. You told them you
needed a psychological.
Yes. Okay. I said I need help because I'm not suicidal, but I don't feel like I should be living. I'm not. If I die, it's not a problem.
You had no purpose. You were living an empty life with no purpose. And you didn't have any goals at that time. No. You didn't see any hope for a better life in the future.
And all of this pressure was just weighing on me so bad. And so you walk in the room and they lock the door. Yeah. That's creepy. Right? Yeah. But the doctor came, they examined me and everything. They said, look, okay. They understood the situation and they said, I need to get a good psychiatrist and I need to get a good psychologist. And they sent me on my way. And so, sent
you back home, in other words. Yeah.
The next day I called and got an appointment. And this is what changed my life. This doctor that I went to. He's got to be dead by now. He was 9,000 years old when I saw him. Those giant old man ears, right? But
what is that? Men are cursed. The older we get, the bigger our ears get. I look at pictures of me, and I think I have small ears. But they're definitely bigger than they were 10, 15 years ago. Yeah, what is that, man?
That just means we have more privileges, right?
Well, there we go.
But, so I went to see him. His name was Dr. Ed Alderet. And he was in medical center in San Antonio. And so I drove up and basically, we went through the whole testing and all this stuff. And he basically helped me understand what the problem was. The problem wasn't that I have all this pressure and I can't function and all this. That's not the problem. That's the symptom.
Yeah.
The problem is my entire system of thought was geared to a cult that I no longer belonged in. My entire train of thinking was going the wrong way.
You were conditioned to think the way Jehovah's Witness, that organization, wanted you to think.
Yeah.
And now you're no longer in that organization, and you have yet to have found a new way of processing things, a new way of expressing yourself. You were still in that.
I was stuck in that thinking. I was still thinking I was
quite
going to die.
the problem.
I was still thinking
Yeah.
that God is expecting me to do all these things. I was still thinking that the world is black and white.
So you thought you were just the mega sinner of the 20th century.
More or less.
21st century.
Then that put me on a new path. Now that I understand what the problem is, then I started looking on how to solve it.
Yeah.
And
What'd you come up with?
I went to college.
There you go.
The best class I have ever taken in my life, critical thinking. Critical thinking saved my life. It really did.
How so? I know the value of critical thinking. How did you apply it to help yourself?
Basically, every time I have a feeling or I receive information and I react a certain way, I ask myself, why do I feel like this? Why am I being triggered? Why am I going down this thought or this train of thought? And 9 times out of 10, I could trace it back to something from the cult. And so I started rooting that out. I'm not going to say I'm cured by any means.
Cured of what? Cured of
cured
what?
of cult
What do you
thinking.
see as your, cult thinking is the diagnosis, if you will.
Yeah.
That is what you have been suffering from and still are suffering from.
To a degree now, it's much, much, much better. But I still suffer from things like I can give you Alana's phone number, my lovely partner, #Team Alana.
I spoke with her very briefly on the phone while you were showing. He was washing his ass before he came here. I have my standards, you know.
She's awesome. She's just so awesome. But
we're blessed to have good women.
But the thing is, we are conditioned in the cult to seek external approval. Approval is supposed to come from within.
But here you've got to please the elders. You've got to please the organization.
Right? Everyone except yourself. And so sometimes I still get into this mode where it's like, Alana will say something to me, just a normal thing. And then suddenly I'm like, oh no, I'm not, I'm being disapproved. And it's
but see,
difficult.
that's to be, of course it is. And that's to be expected because you've lived your entire life, from the time you were 7, 8 years old up until, you were in your 30s before you made, I was going to say a clean getaway. Yeah. That's a long time. That is a long time to think a certain way.
I started college when I was 37. I graduated shortly after we moved here. So it's been an interesting road, but critical thinking has also helped me learn why I never got promoted. You asked me earlier, how did you have this room for thinking in this?
Yeah.
Because I learned at my very core, I question everything.
Yeah.
I'm a nonconformist by nature.
Yeah.
To me,
it's a long time to have that suppressed.
I need to have an answer for things. If I say, why do I have to do this? Because I say so, is not an answer.
No, definitely not.
And so I see that in my children. Yeah. And it's coming to that conclusion. It's like, wow, well, no wonder, because they probably knew I wasn't going to toe the line, in this particular group of men in that congregation at the time. It was total cult of personality.
Right.
The one guy who was running it had been running it for a long time, and he had this ridiculous son that he was grooming to take over his place. And this guy was the typical silver spoon in the mouth. He got to drive a Porsche and no one else got to.
Is it almost a hereditary type of thing that the elders are going to pass that position on to within? No. It does, so it's not like a family,
It was in that one.
Okay.
But that's not my normal experience because I've been in a lot of congregations, and that one, it was that one.
Okay.
The funny thing was all those men got removed.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
Really?
I don't know why, but.
Okay. I was going to ask you why. Very often men in those positions, you might see the televangelist who is he's breathing fire and brimstone and hellfire on homosexuality, for example. And then it comes out that he himself is a homosexual, or even worse, a homosexual pedophile.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hypocrisy that can be found within the leadership of certain congregations.
You saw that video. That's what sparked your interest in this discussion. There's a lot of that in that faith.
Okay.
They don't like to admit it, but it's there.
It's there.
And
I wonder what that is. What is that?
I mean, they have this cults like that collect broken people.
Sure. And
sometimes broken people do some pretty heinous things.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and there's all kinds of other reasons. But
what do you say though to a Jehovah's Witness? Good guy, good lady. They haven't done any of these things openly to suppress people or to negatively influence children, as happened to you. What do you say to them when they say, this isn't a cult, this is my religion?
I generally don't engage with them,
Yeah.
Because, there's a reason for that, right? Because I heard all this growing up too.
Yeah.
People would say, oh, you're in a cult. And
what was your answer to that?
Again, they did our thinking for us, right? Yeah. One of our assemblies, they gave us this book. I don't remember the name of it, but it's called Reasoning on the Scriptures, or I forget, but it's this brown book about that thick. And anytime anyone raised an objection in our ministry work, we were supposed to open the book and turn to that page.
And there's
an
speech.
answer.
There's a speech to give. Yeah.
And that's kind of when you're dealing with people who are programmed like this, there's no point in having the discussion.
Can you remember any of those comebacks that you're supposed to give in certain situations? That'd be really interesting to know.
They called them conversation stoppers.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly anymore.
Okay.
It's been a long time. When I left, I threw all the literature away.
Sure.
I kind of wish I kept some of it, because what I've learned too is that they go back and change their literature sometimes. They'll say something and then it gets, completely blown up or whatever, and then they change it in the next edition. And they'll say, oh, we don't say that. See, it says it right here. But then everyone on the internet is like, but here's the previous edition.
But see, to me, that speaks to and this isn't just for Jehovah's Witness, but this is for religion in general. That speaks to the corruption of what religion is supposed to be about.
But again,
why would you have the need to go in? And I'm not condemning, I'm just questioning, but why would you have the need to go in and change your literature, to change the way in which you present your religion?
Well, since you brought that up, funny story.
Yeah.
Remember that 1914 date?
1914.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's supposedly when the end started.
Yeah.
Or the time of the end, whatever. Yeah. I don't remember what
the beginning of the end times.
Yes. You want to know where that date came from?
Where'd that come from?
Because I kept asking that question. Well, there's this long prophecy. All these prophecies we're supposed to memorize, and it has something to do with the Gentile times and all this. There's scriptures in Daniel and all these other goofy books, and you count the number of days that were listed as like 2,520 days.
Yeah.
And then there's a biblical principle called a day for a year. So it's 2,520 years from the time Jerusalem was destroyed, or I don't remember, something like that. And that supposedly brings you to 1914.
Gotcha.
Here's the problem.
Yeah.
Historians are like, Jerusalem wasn't destroyed on that date.
Right.
It was, I don't remember if it was before or after, but it was a pretty significant difference. But nope, 1914, that's the date. Their chronology is correct and everyone else is wrong. But I got a hold of one of the older publications one time.
Yeah.
Because I kept saying, the guy who effectively started the faith is a guy named Charles Taze Russell. look like a goofy Quaker with an oatmeal beard and everything. I mean, like you see.
Quaker oatmeal.
Yeah, I mean, just total,
Yeah.
This was in the mid to late 1800s. He wrote all these books. And I remember as when I was interested in this stuff, I was like, oh, I'd like to read what he wrote.
Sure.
They were like, no, you don't really want to do that. And I'm
interesting.
Like, well, why not?
Very interesting.
Well, you have all these other things to read now. You should read those. Wow. But no, I wanted it. So I got a hold of one of them. Let
me guess. You found a lot in there that wasn't matching with what you were currently being taught.
Something in there about the date 1914. He wrote this massive volume set. I don't know, it's like 10 volumes or something. It's called Studies in the Scriptures or something. I don't remember. But they have a lot of the same kind of names with their books. But it had, I don't remember exactly how it's worded, but he came up with the date 1914 because it had something to do with the number of steps in the Great Pyramid of Giza. Hello.
Okay.
What does that have to do with anything? But that's where the date originally came from. And then later, because they had been saying it for so long,
right,
when he was no longer running the organization, this other real hardliner guy came in the 1920s. Mm-hmm. That's when, witnesses used to celebrate Christmas. They used to smoke. They used to take blood transfusion, all this thing. When this guy came in, I don't remember his name. When he came in, all of that stopped.
See, and that speaks to mankind taking over something that is supposed to be spiritual, but it's being crafted to fit this thing that gives the individual more control over the minions. And I just don't see where that fits into Christianity or religion, period. I don't get it.
Yeah.
I just don't get it.
Side note, where Russell came up with his stuff wasn't his idea either.
Oh.
He was an associate of this guy named William Miller, who he had this kind of goofy religion going on in the 1800s, which actually stemmed from some French, I think they were called millennialists or something, from the 1790s. So all this stuff that I had been taught starts to unravel.
Right.
And oh my God, it made me so angry because I'm thinking
you were living your life according to this.
But my life is I'm in my 40s now.
Yeah.
And it's like half my life is over.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to get that back.
Right. And you live that life basically under teachings that you now find to be, if not outright false, you see at least a little bit of controversy, a little bit of doublespeak, a little bit of hypocrisy.
And it's like there's so many things I wanted to do that I didn't get to do.
Right.
Well, I had trouble with this, right?
Sure.
It was hard.
Sure.
It was hard. But one day I woke up and I really wasn't that mad anymore because I started to realize that not everything that I experienced was bad.
And I was going to ask you, if you can list up or tell me about some things that are good about being a Jehovah's Witness.
Well, one of the things that they teach is loyalty.
Yeah.
I'm very loyal to my partners, always have been. To me, to even think about being disloyal to my partner is
unthinkable for
unthinkable. So I appreciate that from them. But nothing really else from the teachings.
Yeah.
But
okay.
I realized that I am where I am today because of the path I went down. I have 2 great kids.
Yeah.
I am now with the woman I have waited my entire life for, And
isn't that a good feeling?
Yeah, it's amazing. And I live in Norway now. And as much as I make fun of Norwegian food, I actually love living here.
Yeah.
I'm not going to leave unless they make me leave. And if I keep making fun of the food, they might. but
if Team Snoopy gets any bigger, I might have to leave.
But I didn't get to do the things I wanted to do in the way I wanted to do them.
Right.
But I've actually had a pretty good career. I went into programming without a college degree.
Think about that.
That's hard.
Yeah.
Right?
It's almost unheard of.
I happened to be in the right place at the right time, and I took advantage of my opportunities. This was in the 90s, actually.
Yeah.
I had a doctor. I get migraines from time to time, and he basically, this was when I was having a lot of trouble with a crazy cult wife. And, he did all his tests and everything, and he's basically, all right, this is your problem. And the job I had, I didn't like. I was bored. He says, you are an abstract creative person. You need a creative outlet. The job you have isn't cutting it. So your body is telling you need to do something else.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, okay, what are my options? And he says, well, you can get another job.
Yeah.
But there's no guarantee you can, because you don't have a college degree.
Right.
And you might find something, it's the same situation. I said, okay, what's option number 2? He says, option number 2 is we give you medication for the migraines. He says, but that doesn't really, that just addresses the symptoms.
Yeah.
And there's side effects and et cetera. I said, all right, well, what's option number 3? He says, change your attitude. I'm like, what? I'm like 25 years old, punk.
Yeah,
right? I'm like, give me the damn pills.
Yeah.
But I thought about it. And a couple of days later, I noticed we had, at my company, we had needs that our department wasn't getting filled from the IT department. And so I went down and I asked them, can you show me how to do this? And they said, oh, okay. And so then
that's a good display of initiative.
I started learning.
Yeah.
And then I basically took that to the next step.
Right.
I went and got a bunch of books. I taught myself how to do a bunch of things. And lo and behold, I ended up with a job at Citibank as a programmer.
Yeah.
And then I moved on into other things, and my professional life began. I'm a little fortunate that I stumbled into a niche.
Yeah.
That
timing. Oh.
Yeah, it kind of helps with work here.
Sure.
In Norway. I mean,
you travel a lot, don't you?
Yeah.
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 Tiring or exciting?
When you go to the airport here in Gardermoen and you go through security and they recognize you, might be a little too much. But so Corona was a blessing for that. And the travel is not going to be like that anymore. But in any event, I did get the job I wanted. I did get to go to college, just not how I wanted to go.
Right.
But I got the value out of it. And I still take classes.
So can I guess a little bit or presume you don't look at all of those years as a member of as a Jehovah's Witness? You don't look at that and wish it never happened. You look at it for what it is. It was a rough time for you. It was a confusing time, damaging in some ways.
Many ways.
But it still brought you
to
where you are. And you're a happy man, and you're a happy man now.
Yeah.
Critical thinking. I don't think we talked enough about that. You said critical thinking saved your life.
Yep.
Talk a little bit more about that, because I'm a proponent of, if I could bottle critical thinking, I would give it away to people for free. We can never have enough of that. I'll say the opposite. We have far too little of it today. Yeah. And when you look at the socio-political situation, not just here in Norway, but back home in the United States, maybe especially back home in the United States.
Especially in Texas.
You know what? Texas is, we're going to talk about Texas. No, we're not. That's another podcast. I do want to ask you about that. I just want to say already, I want to have you back.
Oh.
We're not going to get through everything that's on my mind now, because it seems like every sentence you say is leading me to, as you can see, I don't have any questions prepared, because I knew my curiosity was going to make this conversation last as long as it has. But tell me in a few minutes, if you can, critical thinking, what did it do for you, and how would you how would you define critical thinking? I don't know why I'm having trouble thinking today. I'm thinking in Norwegian, and I don't know why I'm doing that.
I'm glad you're not speaking in Norwegian. Sorry, Norway, my Norwegian sucks.
Well, no, this podcast and the radio program is of course, they're both conducted here in Norway, but I do have that international audience in mind. So
I would say critical thinking is a couple of things. it is paying attention to your mind.
Yeah.
It's paying attention to the information coming in, and it's making sure that you believe what you really believe. These are so important. There's
a term, check yourself.
Yeah. What Dr. Alderette told me all those years ago was when people escape cults, they very often end up in another one. Maybe it's religious, maybe it's not.
Could that be because they've been conditioned to not think for themselves? They
Exactly.
have not
That's
used
exactly
critical
why.
thinking ever before in their lives.
That's exactly why. Because
I bet it's a naked feeling to be an adult
Yeah.
who doesn't know how to engage in critical thinking. So maybe they're more or less conscious, or subconsciously searching for that new
and so
box to put themselves in.
when you pay attention to how your mind works, every human being can do this.
Sure.
Except for ones with some genetic thing that put them over here, the fringe case. But every human being can do this.
Yeah.
It's when the example that I love to go to, and this was an example in the class. The question was asked: a man in Louisiana is sentenced to life imprisonment because he committed a murder.
Yeah.
So how long does he actually serve? Is it 20 years? Is it 30 years? Is it 40 years? Or is it life? What do you think?
If he is sentenced to life in prison, but he's already lived a part of his life, then it's not truly life in prison. If they said the rest of your life, then that's a certain number of years, depending on how long you live.
It's the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Right. So he's sentenced to the rest of his life. How long does he actually serve? Is it 20 years? Is it 30 years? Is it 40 years? Or is it the rest of his life?
It's the rest of his life.
Why do you say that?
Well, of course, you see, now I'm thinking in legalese, of course, you can get early release. You can be put out on parole, but the initial sentence is life. So that's the sentence, life. That's how long they are intended to serve, which is the rest of their life.
And so
I would say
the right answer is life.
Yeah.
But not for the reason you said.
How so?
The penal code in the state of Louisiana says that life is life. There's no possibility of parole.
Okay.
If you get sentenced to life in Louisiana, you're done.
Yeah.
Each state has a different penal code.
Yeah.
Some of them are similar and some of them are pretty different. Now, the point of the exercise was, why did you answer the way you did? Because somewhere along the line, we have associated a prison sentence with an amount of time that may or may not be the actual amount of time.
Okay, yeah.
Because we've heard it, we've seen it on TV,
Sure.
We've heard people talk about it, and subconsciously, that's where our brain goes to, because the way human beings and intelligence works is it's all relational.
Yeah.
We relate this information to something we already know. That's how we remember it.
Yeah.
And so we're doing this all the time. It's autopilot, right? I realize I did the crazy sign. Hashtag team nuts.
Hashtag.
But but we can make relational, or we can come up with relational ideas that we don't even know we're doing.
I see.
We can watch something. We can watch fiction, for example. Take the coronavirus as an example.
Yeah.
Well, you can't take a vaccine because it's giving babies at 3 months old, they're able to walk and they're born with black eyes.
Yeah.
This is what a Republican senator is saying in the States right now.
Which one? I'm not surprised in the slightest. I haven't heard
remember.
that, but I'm not surprised because they're coming up with some wackadoodle stuff.
I don't remember his name. I think it was on Bill Maher the other day. That's where I heard it. It was either Bill Maher or it was Colbert, one of the two.
Yeah.
And it's like, why are they saying things like this?
Yeah.
Why are people so afraid of vaccines? Why are they so afraid, besides the politicization of it, but why are they so afraid of these things?
Because
and
they're
a
not
lot of it
thinking
has to,
critically.
they're not thinking critically. A lot of it has to do with, we've seen something on TV,
Yeah.
probably fiction.
Yeah.
And now, oh my God. You know, the same thing happens with religion. The same things happens with politics. It happens with every single thing. News. Take news as an example. What is news? By definition, news is something out of the ordinary. Out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
Now, you and I are old enough to remember when money wasn't in news.
Yes.
And we got accurate news.
And there was no celebrity speaking into the microphone. Mm-hmm. It was a respected, neutral guy, usually, sometimes a woman, who had no agenda. Right. They were literally just giving you the news of the day.
The news were loss leaders for the networks.
Yeah.
And they delivered, this is what happened.
Yeah.
We remember Dan Rather and Walter Cronkite and all those guys, right? Well, along came Rupert Murdoch, and money came into the equation. But because money is now involved, how do you get people to pay you to see your news? You have to slant it towards something they're internally biased for. And it doesn't take a lot of
doesn't take much.
I mean, you can look at all the news today. You see the clickbait, you see the sensationalism.
Well, but that's not only slanting it, that's painting it up a little bit. That's putting makeup on it. Yeah. So it looks a little prettier, more exciting, more fireworks.
And you see how they slant it towards the agenda that they have.
Yeah.
And if you do not use critical thinking, you can fall into that trap.
Sure.
You know, so
blind acceptance.
Yeah, like we talked about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
I think it's a sad state of affairs, especially in America. That's where my loyalty lies. You know, we talked about that a little bit about how good we have it here in Norway, and I acknowledge that daily. But I'm still terribly homesick. But what hurts me is that I don't think I am homesick for something that doesn't exist anymore.
I know the first time I went back to the States after I moved here would have been 2016, I think. So it had been 6 years.
Yeah.
And Yolanda and I went to visit her mom in Denver. And I took a brief trip down to see my parents because I thought it was what I was supposed to do. I was just going to be gone a day, and it turned out to be a day too long. But I know that when I went there, I don't know, it's because I lived here as long as I have, but I felt like everywhere I went, I was in a giant shopping mall. It didn't matter where. Just commercials were just pinging me nonstop. And it's like...
Well, you really get that on radio and on television. But then there's also the visual, you know, with the billboards and everything. You really can't escape that commercial.
And it's just so hollow.
Constant. Yeah, it's constant.
It's hollow.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been back 2 more times since then. I took my kids to see their grandparents.
Yeah.
This last time did not turn out so good. So that kind of broke everything, I think. So,
but this lack of critical thinking in America, coupled with the way the news is presented, coupled with the constant commercial, it at least on the surface, because I think I misspoke a little bit. I'm not homesick for something that doesn't exist, because you have all of that on the surface. You know, the way the news is presented and everything, and it paints a picture of America. And yet, every time when I have gone home, and I haven't been home, I've been here 20 years in Norway, 19 years, and I've only been home 3 or 4 times, maybe 4 times. And when I do go home, I can feel it in my very core when I'm back in my hometown or in that area that not too much has changed. It's when I'm here and I see the news and I see how people are reacting to it. That's where I get that sense of what's happening. Things are not the same back home.
Yeah.
There's a duality.
Yeah. I think also it might have something to do too with you and I come from a generation that didn't really appreciate what we had when we had it.
Really? You don't think so?
Look at it like this. We grew up in a time where there was no YouTube.
Yeah.
And the stupid shit that we did is not memorialized forever on the internet for
Right.
everyone to see.
That's true.
We had books.
Yeah.
We went outside.
Yeah.
We had
real social gatherings.
Yes, we had. Well, I didn't, but everyone else did. But we had a time when, at least it seemed like to me, there was a period of time where it was more like here in Norway.
Oh.
Now it's like, it seems like the U.S. has gone down this materialistic, selfish route where it's
selfish.
Every man for himself.
That I cannot recognize in my America. I don't understand that selfishness. It used to be that it didn't.
I need to, Tiffany's going to kick me. I need to retract my pronoun use. Every person for
what pronoun
him or
did
herself.
You use?
I said man.
Every man, yeah.
Hashtag Team Tiffany.
Tiffany, I love you. I miss you. She's having some more voice problems. But when she gets that settled, she's going to be back on my show. I just love her to death. Snoopy loves her. That's my girl. That's my sister. So hi, Tiffany, if you're watching. If you're not watching, shame on you. But if you are watching, hi.
she won't be a voice problem. You know what I mean?
She's the best. I just love that woman.
Awesome.
Yeah. Let's see. Moving towards the end of this. Let me ask you a couple of things. Now, you've had such a dynamic background, and it's brought you to where you are now, and you seem to be a happy guy. You seem to be a man at peace.
Yep.
And I'm not saying everything is resolved. You were telling me about how watching The Handmaid's Tale, brought about bouts of PTSD.
Yeah.
So there's still some things that you need to work with, but you seem to be a leveled, feet on the ground, looking positive towards the future type of guy.
As a side note, it's kind of funny. Last night when I went to sleep, I had nothing but cult dreams.
Really?
Yeah. Because I knew I was going to talk about it today.
Well, see, and here's my question. How much of a struggle or how much of an effort is this? This conversation?
This conversation is not at all.
But the leading up to it, did you have any, everything's going fine now. You seem really relaxed right now.
I think
I hope you are. But leading up to it, did you have any anxiety about this?
I think it was more the format. I've never done anything like this before.
Yeah.
It's like I've always listened to you on that side.
Yeah.
And now I'm on this side. And, that's... But it's okay because I get to wear my nice Dak Prescott jersey.
Dak Prescott. Gosh, I hope he has a good year. But so leading up to this conversation, you didn't feel any anxiety at all? Now, you said you had your dreams and
about
whatnot.
Talking about my experiences? No. I often have cult dreams, but they're sporadic at times.
Now, you say cult dreams. Do you avoid saying Jehovah's Witness?
Do you
avoid? Why?
I hate that name.
You just hate the name?
I hate that name. I've alluded that, I didn't really say, but I've alluded that that my parents and family and I, we don't speak to each other anymore. This happened a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
The last time I went back, it had something to do with one of my daughters making a statement, and my mom was all over it. And I basically had to say, look, they're entitled to their opinion.
Sure.
Well, so she calls me up on Skype like 6 months later, and she had all these points she wanted me to talk to her about.
Wow.
And I looked at her and I said, you really been sitting 6 months on this to discuss this? What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And they had some things that they said, and then I said something to the effect of, well, if your God, Jehovah, if God is really like that, because I don't believe there is a God, but if there is, and he's like that, the other guy's got a point.
Yeah.
Hashtag Team Satan.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, I want nothing to do with it. And so to me, their God is a kid with a microscope and an anthill or a magnifying glass.
Yeah.
He's a horrible, horrible being.
Yeah. was going to say a dickhead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if we could say that on your show.
Sure we can. Oh, come on now. Have you heard the episodes with Tiffany? The language out of that wonderful, intelligent mouth is...
Tiffany gets a pass.
Tiffany gets a pass, yeah.
I mean, I don't think I get a pass.
No, it's... No, people can say whatever they want here. No problems. Certain things will be cut out for the radio program, but for the podcast, you guys can say anything. But... Okay, so leading up to this, then, you had no anxiety. Do you feel a certain lightness, or do you feel a certain sense of accomplishment now that you've spoken on this? And then, in a side question, have you spoken this deeply about your experiences before, outside of anyone in the medical field?
Not to a mass audience.
No.
One-on-one, here and there.
You feel comfortable saying all the things that you've said?
Oh, I mean, it's
because I think people can. It's the truth, and I think people can learn something from it, regardless of where you are in the spectrum of all things religion. I believe that your account can be a learning moment for people.
I'm hoping so. It's, when you first asked me to do this, I started thinking about it, and I thought, if what I say helps one person who's struggling with, should I stay or should I leave? And it helps them make up their mind, then it's all worth it. Yeah. The most important thing that we can have in our life is peace. Yeah. People, they want to be right all the time. Yeah. But it's not realistic, number one. And number two, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. Yep. So peace is way more important.
And again, my views, which differ slightly from yours, my views on religion are that is that religion is supposed to be there to guide people towards peace. Mm-hmm. And when you insert the arrogance of mankind, when you insert the control issues, when you insert the judgment and whatnot, I don't see how that can be legitimately wrapped up in what religion is supposed to be. It's corrupting the concept of religion. Yeah. And it sounds like that is pretty much exactly what you went through. And
you have so many other competing agendas in a lot of organized religion. A lot of it is, I mean, with Jehovah's Witnesses, under the hood, it's a worldwide empire of real estate. It's for people who believe the end of the world is coming, they sure are amassing a lot of money.
See, and that's another thing that I struggle with understanding about.
Oh, speaking of which, I told you about the service at Bethel. Yeah. You know what they did? All the people who went to Bethel, they were considered volunteers. Yeah. They only got paid like, $15 a week or something, so they could buy toiletries and things like that. When you were there for 30 years, guess what happened when you left? You had no Social Security.
Right.
You'd never paid in.
Right.
And they were just kicking them out and dumping them on local congregations.
So if you
How is that even legal?
So if you stayed there year after year in service at Bethel,
of them did.
That was your entire life.
That was your entire life.
They would feed you and clothe you, and they had a place to stay, but you were not employed, which means you were not paying into Social Security, which means that you had no future, which means that you were totally dependent on that organization. And there comes the control. Yep. There comes the control that I think does not jive with what religion is supposed to be about.
And when you retired at 60, 70 years old, you had health problems. Guess what else you didn't have? Health insurance.
Health insurance, yeah.
So it was a complete tragedy. I mean, they're for what they claim. Oh, we're trying to preach God's word, blah blah blah, whatever. I mean, that's not what they do.
No.
So.
Well, very much of what you have referred to us here on the microphone does not jive with what I know about the Word of God. It sounds like the word of the elders. Is that a safe assumption for me to make? I mean, that's what it sounds. Again, mankind, in this case, a group of men inserting their will and then telling people who they then encourage to not, like they told you, don't go back and read the old stuff. Just listen to us.
Yep.
They are inserting their will on top of the will of God.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's just craziness.
I'm not a theologist, but it certainly sounds strange. It certainly sounds like a corruption of.
It seems to me that if God is all powerful and can do all these things, can't he get his message right?
See, but see, here's
they
the
have
thing.
an answer. They have an answer.
Yeah.
He's working through imperfect men. And it always comes back to, this is a test of your faith.
Yeah. Well,
why would I have faith in someone who can't get anything right?
And I would say God, this whole thing that is religion, I have no clue who or what God is. I don't know. I don't pretend to know that.
Snoopy.
Goddess. ESS at the end. No, but I don't pretend, I'm not a religious scholar, but I know how I interpret religion. And there's no, when I speak with people about religion, first of all, it's only if they want to hear it, if they take up the conversation. And then I don't feel that I need to insert my own opinion or my own will to try and use it to control that person. And that's what I see happening so much with religion, is that it's being used as a tool to control people. A televangelist out there who buys a stadium that seats 70,000 people can be a man of God.
Yeah.
But he certainly doesn't look like one when all he is doing is raking in the cash. And you don't see that televangelist doing true works in the
Joel
footsteps.
Osteen.
And that's exactly what I was speaking. Creflo Dollar. Creflo Dollar. No, I was thinking, I was talking with a stand-up comedian friend of mine about Joel Osteen.
Yeah.
And about how he bought that stadium in Houston.
Yeah, I think it was. He's in Houston, I believe. Yeah.
I believe. He bought a stadium in Houston. He packs it full with like 60,000 people twice a week on Sundays and Wednesdays, but he's doing very little. Well, I can go back to when we had the hurricane in 20.
Yeah, he wouldn't let anybody in it.
And he wouldn't let anybody in. And you talk about what would Jesus do, is he certainly wouldn't lock the doors in a time of of need for the entire community. So that's where I'm getting at, is that these men are inserting their own desires for their own financial enrichment.
Yep.
And that is not what religion is. But that's certainly what a lot of people are seeing religion to be used as. And it's corrupting what the true meaning of religion is supposed to be, which is peace. Peace, brotherhood, love, sharing, giving, service.
Yeah.
Willful. not because a bunch of guys told you to, but willful.
I think George Carlin summed it up. He basically said religion or the 10 Commandments basically can be summed up into, don't be a dick.
And that is really the best way. If you could paraphrase the Bible, especially the New Testament, it's pretty much saying, don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick. It's that easy.
So this conversation was easy for you, yes?
Yeah.
How do you converse with someone who has a strong religious life or a strong religious
had
countenance?
Conversations.
Is there any challenge in that for you?
No, not really, because at the end of the day, it's not my job to convert anyone to anything. People are allowed to believe what they want.
Sure.
And it's got nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
Mostly what I'm interested in learning is, does this person really believe what they say?
And there
because
you go. Yeah.
Most don't. Most are on autopilot.
Yeah.
They just
lack of critical thinking.
Exactly. They just parrot back what they hear. They don't actually think about what it means.
Yeah.
Like I love the people that come up to me and say, all you have to do to go to heaven is to believe in Jesus. I'm like, that's it? Like, yes, you must believe in Jesus. I said, so you're saying Adolf Hitler is in heaven?
Exactly.
They're like, what? I'm like, well, you said all you have to do is believe, and he was fanatical Christian.
Yeah.
He must be in heaven.
Yeah.
Oh, No. There's other rules. Okay, well, what are they? The Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments. Yes. I said, so what you're saying now is when you die, you're going to hell. Like, what? Ten Commandments say thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not lie. And I know you do those things.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't really believe what you think you
Right.
believe.
Right.
You know?
There are so many people who put again, back to the critical thinking thing, they put no thought into this stuff that's coming out of their mouth. Mm-hmm. They put no thought behind it. They're reading the script.
Autopilot.
Whether it's been given to them by Fox News or by CNN or by the guy at the bar or by organizations.
Or Nicki
religious
Minaj's
organizations.
cousin.
Or Nicki Minaj's cousin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
The White House actually spoke about her.
Yeah.
Wow. No, but
this podcast has now been dated, by the way.
this podcast has now been dated. Well, we've been dated talking about before the internet and things like that. So I want to ask you a question. I'm going to ask you to do two things for me now before we wrap this up.
Yep.
I'm going to start a sentence. I'm going to say 3 words, and then I want you to finish the sentence.
Uh-oh.
Okay?
Are you sure you want to do this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Steve Solomon is?
Thinking about what to say.
Constantly or?
Constantly.
You are a deep thinking guy now. You were robbed of your human right to engage in critical thinking. You were robbed of that for a period of years. Has that pushed you into an ultra critical thinker? Are you always thinking and analyzing and evaluating consciously?
I do pause before I say things.
You do?
And I know the people who are close to me, it drives them nuts. But you have to do that.
Sure.
You know?
Absolutely.
It's, I don't know, maybe that comes from being older. You learn that just because you have a thought in your head, doesn't mean it should come out of your mouth.
Right. Yeah.
You know, but I also think too, it's important that whoever you're talking to, whether it's a friend or a foe or a colleague or someone, it's important to hear what they have to say. And you can't hear with your mouth.
We talked about getting older and our ears keep growing. That's for listening.
Yeah. But you can't hear with your mouth.
That is very true. People need to learn when to shut up. Mm-hmm. I'm making my living off of talking here, but I like to listen. Mm-hmm. I do this to learn. I do this to gain in knowledge. Yeah. It's almost like a mantra. I say it so many times, both in life out there, but also on this podcast, that I do this. I bring in guests, people who interest me, inspire me, motivate me, so that I can hopefully learn something that will then make me stronger, not only for myself, but for my family and my friends around me. So that it's things can be done either directly by me or through something I've done for someone else to make the world a little bit better.
Yeah.
A little bit better.
It really can be that simple.
I think it is. And like I say, it's almost a mantra. I mean, I'm very much, I'm on a mission with this podcast. I'm on a mission with my, with the things that I talk about and the people that I bring in. There's a meaning behind it. And you, Steve, and your story fall right in line with my mission, which is dialogue, conversation, new knowledge.
Yeah. Discussion.
Dialogue. Change is not going to happen without dialogue. Learning can't happen without, I mean, it can be insular. You can sit and read a book, but you want to talk about what you read and make sure you got it right. So again, back to the dialogue. Yeah. It's essential. Okay. So Steve Solomon is thinking of what to say. Mm-hmm. Next thing I want to ask you, if, you're a humble guy, you're a quiet guy, you're a thinker, but I want you to be a little bit profound for a minute, if you would. Is there something that you can say for anybody who's watching or listening that might help them, motivate them, or inspire them in some way? Is there something you can say right now? A few sentences, a paragraph? Take the time you need to say what you think might be, because we all put we all put a vibe out there. It can be positive or negative. Your vibe is without a doubt positive. I call you friend.
Yeah. Same.
Thank you. Take that vibe and put it out there for anybody who's watching or listening. What can you say that can help them out?
Well, I guess if I look at my life, and the end game of my life is I would like to have a tombstone that says, not a bad guy. That's what I wanted to say. And of course I can't write that. But if you go through something shitty, it doesn't have to wreck your life. There's always something good you can find in it. Either, with my cult experience, I learned how not to live my life. How many people get that opportunity?
Yeah.
We live and we go to school and we go to work every day and we come home and we do our normal routines. But do we ever think about what it means? What is it we want to do?
Yeah.
Do we know who we as people are? Like I have this extreme situation with my children that I'm going through now. That's not good. But people ask me, well, how are you able to handle that? And I say to them, this is not the worst thing I've ever been through.
Yeah.
That's probably a discussion for another podcast.
Absolutely, it is. The wheels are spinning in my head about that discussion. Yeah.
My kids are great. # Team Z and Team Sienna. So
there you go.
Shout out to them. They're struggling with some things that were done to them.
Yeah.
And so what I try to help them do as well is, life sucks sometimes, but life is also what you make of it. This is the only one we have that we know of.
That's some truth right there. Yeah.
And so take the bad and learn from it, and always try to go forward and always try to be a good person.
Yeah.
Be truthful about things. You can't solve the right problem if you don't know what it is.
Right.
Or if it's hidden from you, So I guess that's my,
well, that's a good piece of, for the last 5 minutes, you've been a motivational speaker for anybody who's listening. I mean, that is a good
and don't be a dick.
And don't be a dick.
And join Team Snoopy.
But that is a good chunk of real inspirational speaking. And it's so basic. It's so straightforward. It's so easy.
Yeah.
People just have to remind themselves of it.
We find ourselves in complicated situations.
Sure.
Life really isn't that hard.
It isn't. You have to train. I think you have to train yourself to be prepared for the twists and turns.
Of course, that's the complicated situation part, right?
Yeah.
And many people find themselves in horrible circumstances.
Sure.
Right? Horrible.
Sure.
We're lucky that we grew up in the West.
Yeah.
My partner grew up in perestroika times in Russia. Hard times.
Yeah.
I have friends who grew up in just complete poverty in places like in Africa and other places.
Yeah.
But they're some of the happiest people I've ever met.
Find the happiness, people.
Yeah.
It's there.
Because the world has this idea of what success is.
Yes. Yeah.
But it really isn't that. Success
is so far removed from money.
Yeah.
Money.
It's about peace.
I like to say that money will not buy you happiness, but it will pay for the search for happiness.
Yeah.
So there's a value in money and changing lives and towards personal comfort, but it's not the end all be all. Well, and yet it's becoming that for so many people.
Let's caveat that though.
Can we? Yeah.
Money will pay for a very questionably shaped rocket to shoot you into space.
Well, that falls in line with, but that falls in line with it'll
I had
pay
to
for
do
the
it.
search. It'll pay for the search for happiness.
Had
You
to
know,
do it.
you
Had to
could,
do it.
Jeff Bezos and people like that, they can pay for these rockets. They can go up there, and it's not really, that in itself is not making them happy.
No.
But that act, which they were able to pay for, is certainly bringing them some degree of comfort in the attention that they're getting, in the forwarding of their brand,
Yeah,
and whatnot.
I'm not.
That's a whole.
I'm,
That's a whole.
I'm not sure that it does, but
I think some of those guys are faking it. I don't know, but I think some of them are faking. I think some of them are not happy at all.
it's about peace. At the end
Sure,
of the day, it's about
it is.
peace. You know, are you able to look yourself in the eye in the mirror
Yeah.
before you go to bed?
It's a matter of conscience, peace
Yeah.
of mind. Well, listen, we have to wind this up, unfortunately.
I thought we were going for an hour.
Yeah, here it is, 2 hours and 6 minutes and 25 seconds, 26 as we
There
count
you go.
on.
This has been fun.
It's been a lot of fun for me, and I'm honored. Truly, I'm not saying this to be the cool and dramatic host. I'm telling you, from one friend to another, I'm truly honored that you sat down and spoke with me and put this out there for people to hopefully learn something from. And I'm not going to say what the message is, what they should learn. I'm not going to ask you to say what they should learn. Take this conversation, people, for what it was, and see what's in there that can help you along on your journey. Is that a good way to put it?
Absolutely. And the only other, I think the last closing comment, hashtag Team Snoopy. Gotcha.
Almost choking to death over here. Hashtag Team Snoopy. I tease because I love.
Yep.
I think my next episode, my next podcast episode, is going to be with Snoopy coming up here in a few days, and we are going to talk. Speaking of my podcast and my radio show, if you guys want to find out information about it, go to my website, www. as my mother says. She refuses to say she's a hillbilly, but she says W, not W.
Where I come from, they say the same thing.
There you go. My people are all just a bunch of hillbillies that decided not to no longer live in the hills of Kentucky. Okay, I was raised in Ohio. Anyway, www.johnallenpod.com. I almost messed that up. johnallenpod.com. That's JOHNALANPOD.com. You can find me on social media at John Allen Pod. Look me up. Check out my episodes. Check out this episode. Comment. Share it. Learn and share. And learn and share. That means dialogue, people. That's what this is all about. Steve, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Steve Solomon, everybody. Bye now.
Bye.